Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We're really excited to welcome many of HRS Hotel partners to join us in our conversations around sustainability and for you to get to know more, even more, and start engaging more actively with the HRS Green Stay Initiative. As some more participants are joining still, let me get started a little bit with a few reminders for our session today. As you can see, you are welcome to use the Q&A function on the Zoom webinar panel. You can locate it in the navigation menu to share any questions that you may have for us, for any of our panel speakers during the session, and we'll do as much as possible to pick up on and cover your questions during the time that we have today. Our session is scheduled for 1 hour. And for those that we don't get to cover during the session, we will find a way to follow up and share some answers and responses to everyone who sign up for the webinar, as well as HRS Hotel partners. As usual, the recording as well as the slides will be made available afterwards for you to revisit, and you will receive a notification email for that afterwards as well. And the email address you can see here for any support questions, any additional questions related to Green Stay outside of this webinar. If you need help, please do reach out to the Green Stay team. That's all the housekeeping reminders as we get started. So I would like to start introducing the panel that will be presenting for you today. And I will just start with myself. My name is Ayako Izaki. I will be moderating our session today. I'm really excited to be doing so and be connecting with a lot of you. I represent Training Aid, which is an international training company that specializes in sustainable tourism. And so sharing knowledge around sustainable tourism, sustainability in travel, tourism, and hospitality, and training is really where the intersection of my passions and professional engagement are. And we as part of that, we've been really fortunate to be able to work with Fabio and HRS on Green Stay, specifically focused on sharing knowledge, creating and sharing knowledge, which we will be able to share a little bit more about later on. As you can see next on the slide, Professor Willy Regant is one of our speakers, and many of you probably know Willy as an expert in hospitality. As you can see, he is a professor at the IU International University, and couple of the many other places that you will find him at ITB Berlin, the board of experts, which is a member of, and I think that you, if you haven't seen already, you can find him in many of the videos from the convention where he's presenting or moderating. And he's also done a lot of work on hospitality.net, where you will find a lot of relevant and interesting information, especially for you representing hotels. And he's also a writer, author, editor for many prominent journals covering sustainability in hospitality. You will get to know a little bit more about his work today, as well as some insights related to really this area of sustainability in hospitality. And Fabio, I think, doesn't need introduction, I think, to the HRS network, but he is the product manager for sustainability for HRS and is really leading Green Stay Initiative. And as mentioned, I've had the pleasure of really working with them in this related to knowledge sharing and Green Stay. And so Fabio will also be sharing with you some insights around Green Stay, but also some new exciting developments and solutions. And as part of that, as you can see, also see in this, as Danny is here representing telecom, and Fabio will be sharing some more examples related to that later on. So that's us. Welcome from all of us. So our session today, as titled, we would like to focus on the key components of Green Stay: report, reduce, and remove. And we will cover each of these elements of Green Stay. And as you can imagine, these are big topics and we won't be able to cover everything in detail, but we will get started on some key conversations around these areas of sustainability in hospitality. What does it mean for hospitality to aim to be net zero? And how does that help business travelers as well as hotels? What are some of the key developments that we're seeing in areas related to reporting, which is really, in particular, a relevant theme for Green Stay? And of course, what are some of the key solutions that Green Stay offers for hotels as well as business travelers? So these are some of the big themes that we will be diving into today, and starting with Willie, who is going to share some insights really related to when we say net zero for hospitality, what are we talking about? Where are we? How does that work? What might be some of the roadblocks and challenges, and of course, opportunities. So big themes, but that's not new to you, Willie. And thank you for sharing. We can switch our screens so you can start with your
Yes, please. Yes, I'm ready to share when you stop sharing yours. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks so much also, Ayako, for this wonderful introduction, and also to you, Fabio, and to the entire team, I guess, at HRS and also Training Aid. I just want to confirm that you can hear me properly.
Perfect.
Yeah, thumbs up. Very good. Okay, so yeah, it's a big agenda you have, and I know that. So my name is Willy Legrand. I'm a professor. You've mentioned that already. We've already met once on this the HRS webinar. In fact, and we had talked about energy actually in great details, and I thought this was very interesting. This time you ask for sort of a bit more the generics a little bit, and I do have something on the barriers. I don't think I have it on my slides, but if ever there's a questions about this, we've done some research on barriers to action actually quite a bit. Yeah, so I teach, I research, I live, I breathe sustainability for our industry. I've written 8 books on the topic over the past decade, and I'm currently working on book number 9 and 10. And you may ask, haven't you covered all the topics yet on sustainability? And I guess I have to answer no, in fact, simply because, in fact, there is a lot that's happening, really. And the current situation in I guess around the world is putting our businesses, and I guess all of us, really to the test. And I've tried to put this actually in one graph, this test. Uncertain times, we know geopolitically for sure, but also at the micro level, fair share of what we know as transition risks, or the risks of us transitioning to a net zero pathway. For example, you're diverting money to be more energy efficient, etc. So the transition risk of doing business in transition in a world that is still hooked up on fossil fuel, but we know we need to decarbonize. And also a fair share of what is known as financial or physical risks from the world, that basically it shows us that it can rock the boat, right? We have pretty crazy weather events, and it's affecting our sector directly, indirectly, also through our supply chain. So anyways, how do we cope? How do we build a business that can take such shocks, really? And business themselves have got strategies. We've got strategies, we've got approaches, we've got tactics. And those evolve over time when it comes to sustainability. And many hospitality companies are still very much at the beginning here of this animation you see here. There's stuff before energy management that happens, but I've taken it away. And I've just said, okay, energy management, sorry. And then you move along and you clog your way around. And from energy, you might think eco-efficiency. You're looking at things beyond energy. You think, oh, maybe I have some issues on my waste stream, or maybe I have issues on water management. And you're looking at different parts of the eco-management. And then over time, you sort of think more holistically, because you suddenly figure out that maybe I cannot manage all those environmental issues if I don't have a proper social pillar. my employees are not on board with me, or if they feel disgruntled, whatever. It's just so hard to work on those environmental issues. So suddenly the social pillar becomes important. And you're looking at the triple bottom lines of sustainability, the three pillars: environmental and social and economic. And that comes into consideration. And then what we see though, what we see now is we're having a conversion of issues as really we try, or the world tries to deal with the two sides of that same coin, being the climate emergency, hence this net zero approach, but also a biodiversity collapse, which in hospitality and tourism, we tend to put a little bit to the side. We have very much of a carbon tunnel vision, but we see momentum. We see momentum on the net zero targets. And then what we see, however, happening more and more now is we see lots of discussion around circularity. And that brings us back a little bit to that biodiversity topic. That's around the corner a little bit more. We have more attention into restoration. We have to remember that we are in the middle of a UN decade on ecosystem restoration. We seem to forget that. When I ask the students, what sort of UN decade are we in? And I say, are we in the UN decade of decarbonization? They all say, yes, we are. And I say, actually, we're not. I mean, we are trying to decarbonize, but the official UN is a UN decade of restoration, of ecosystem restorations. This idea of nature positive approach, where business actively restore degraded natural habitat. Often you think of faraway businesses, hotels along the beach with restoring coral reef or mangrove restorations, for example. But really, all of this plays a role at home as well. So I live in the city of Bonn, and I think I have a colleague here from the telecom who lives here as well. But all of this plays a role at home. I mean, we know this. We know in urban areas, in the cities, in Europe, in the summer, we suffer heavily now for extreme heat. And we know that nature makes a role. We have data on the power of forests in urban environment to make a difference. So can I, in and outside of my building, actually help the situation? The same goes with rewilding. We increasingly hear about regeneration. So that regenerative approach, all of this is speeding up actually. And what we're saying is really that it's about conserving and restoring habitat is perhaps not even enough. We need to reverse those losses. That means really transforming the way we conduct business in hospitality, and that means also revisiting the way we produce and consume goods, our food chain. Oof, it's a lot. It's really a lot, I think, that we have on our shoulders, but it's not only us. I mean, it's not only our industry. That pressure is on the shoulders of multiple industries, simply because we look at the needs of all stakeholders, including the need of our home, the planet. So it's a tall order, and in a way, I'm sort of thinking that, and this is a little bit more for the academic side of whoever is actually on this call, if you're interested. But in a way, those approaches have got names, and the names that we've seen over the past is TBL, for that triple bottom line. We hear still a lot around corporate social responsibility, CSR. We have heard, to a certain extent, creating shared values, CSV. They all have their place in business strategy. However, and I'm very critical here, I think TBL hasn't delivered the changes it promised 25 years ago. CSR, with its many program initiative, it's well implemented, including in the hospitality sector. But let's face it, if we're honest with each other, it's under criticism, partly because of that self-governing type of reporting that we've been doing, plenty of greenwashing at the same time. There's a bit of a ceremonial approach to CSR reporting. And then CSV has never really taken hold in hospitality in the first place. Having said that, should we simply disregard those? They're not, we shouldn't really disregard those, because in fact, they have laid the path, I think, to what's currently happening in a discussion. And it's not only an academic discussion. This is a discussion that's happening in business, looking at net peace or net positive business, a commitment to sort of how do we enhance the well-being, how do we improve ecological condition, how do we strengthen societal fabric, what sort of system change is needed, and when, at what stage does sustainability becomes regenerative. And that growth, which is so important to many, is not necessarily synonymous with consumption, but growth could be synonymous to restoration, to regeneration, to resilience. So that's why I've laid out that little graph, because I thought maybe that explains a little bit why I still write on the topic, is simply because it is not static, it evolves, it changes, we change our perspective. And where does ESG, so environmental, social, governance, everything that we hear, where does that fit? this is a little bit the glue at this point. It represents, and this is why I said in that text in the middle here, it's a maturation, a little bit of that sustainability thought, where we look at this tangible, quantifiable standard of established, for the corporate behavior that investors can look at alongside the financial metrics, that the regulators can look at, that the corporate buyers can look at. And I'm going to come back to this because that requires that verified information that everybody is talking about. And so that sets the stage a little bit of where we are right now in the system, change in the system thinking in a way. And I thought I would put this on because the question that I ask myself is, why do I keep writing on a topic? I should just move on with my life and do something else. And in fact, I cannot move on because there is still to be lots to be said on this topic in the first place. So I go back now to this. So what stripe do you stand for is basically, how do we deal with this? These are well-known stripes. The one on the left-hand side are the well-known warming stripes, not to be confused with the Netflix stripes. And that's visual representation of the change in temperature as measured each year in each country over the past 100 years. And that's the work of Professor Ed Hawkins at University of Reading. I use that a lot in different contexts, but within education, simply because it provides such a great discussion for why is this happening, etc. And I mean, this is all, again, this is not a belief system. When you hear people telling you that they don't believe in any of this, you have to say this is not a belief system. This is set in science. It's pretty clear that if we take million years of photosynthesis that has captured all this carbon in the soil and then natural sinks, and then we take it out and we burn it 150 years, we do have a concentration of carbon in the atmosphere, and we can measure that. It's the end of the story, really. And the issue is that we cannot cope, or the planet cannot cope in capturing all this carbon in such an amount of time. That concentration, we see it in those curves here in terms of the major disruption or climate. The stripes in the middle are the one that we don't see so often, but they're equally, if not more important. This is the stripes of the oceans, and the oceans absorbs 40% of the emissions. So it's like this huge carbon pump, really. And the oceans, we understand now that it works as a thermostat for all of us. And we have, it captures a lot of our carbon, of course. And in capturing all that carbon, obviously what it does, it's like if you take a can of Coca-Cola and you have all the gas, and the gas turns into the bubbles, and the bubbles go away, so it becomes carbonic acids, and it drops the pH of the ocean, and we know this as ocean acidification. And that's the stripe that you're seeing here. So that's the drop in the pH. And then, of course, this acidification is not good. It's not good for marine organism, not for coral reef that house the entire ocean food supply chain to which actually we rely. And so those stripes in the middle are actually super important. We tend to focus a lot on the other one. And then on the right-hand side, you know them as well. It's the biodiversity stripes. And this is particularly looking at wildlife population, mammal, birds, amphibians, reptile, etc. And here we've seen in my lifetime, a 69% drop on average since 1970. Because it's hard to adapt to changing condition, it's hard to adapt to urban sprawling, to deforestation, etc. And a lot of it, you may say, well, that's very abstract. We're not linked to this. I beg to disagree. I think the hospitality industry is on the rollout. For the past 20 years, I've looked at the pipeline and the number of construction. We are constructing a lot also on green fields. We are using a lot of food that requires a lot of land, etc. So we definitely have a direct connection to this. And the question is more, how do we deal with this, right? And I'm going to set quickly the big stage, and then I'll go to hotels themselves. The strip themselves are not the problem of individual countries that can handle that. It's also not the problem of individual companies or individual us. It's that it requires that concerted effort. And that's what we have, in fact. And perhaps that's the good news. We don't, I posted not too long ago, I said, well, we don't have a climate police. We don't have a biodiversity police. Global governance is all committees and agreements between countries and the UN. And whether we like it or not, that's the best we have. But those frameworks are actually necessary. And of course, some of you are going to be critical and say, yeah, the Paris Agreement is 2015, nothing has been fixed. Yeah, but we have to realize the Paris Agreement is just the start of the work. An agreement lays down the outline of action and what's expected for every country. It holds people or countries accountable. There's no police, there's lots of elbow shoving, lots of peer pressure. And it provides that roadmap for actions at all levels, setting targets. It gives nation a clear picture. What's the timeline? It's a guide for government, businesses, and the individual. And so we do have the Paris Agreement. And in fact, we do have tools that to put this in practice. We have the science-based target initiatives, really aligning your decarbonization of your hotel along with what the Paris Agreement says, which is to stay within the 1.5 degrees. So it's not like it doesn't exist. We do have the SBTI. We do have that. The other positive news is what you've heard last summer, which is this national or nations convention on the law of the sea. And it's known as a Treaty of the High Seas, which is to protect at least 30% of the oceans by 2030. This is good news since only 1% of the oceans currently is protected. The oceans beyond your boundaries, your national boundaries. And this is actually very good news. And then there's the other good news, which is on the biodiversity front, which is the framework that we have from the Kunming-Montreal framework that was adopted. And there are quite a bit of targets. There are 23 of them. I think there's 3 targets that are super important. There's the one about protecting 30% of our land, about restoring another 30% of our land, and then target 15, which is for businesses to regularly monitor, assess, and disclose their risk, dependencies, and impact on biodiversity, and provide that information to the consumers to promote sustainable consumption pattern. That's a big deal, I think, for biodiversity. And again, we do have science-based target for nature about developing methods, resources, targets grounded in science. So it's not like those agreements just float on their own and there's really no application to businesses. I think there is more and more an understanding that needs to be brought to the business. I'd like to move down a little bit to this. So the global agreements are necessary, but they need to be implemented by local actions. It's like this symbiotic relationship. And more precisely for businesses, what does it mean? I mean, at the end of the day, who provides a story in hospitality? I mean, the hotel provides a story, right? This is how we sell room. We tell the story. It's about our people. It's about our suppliers, about our product, about the furniture, about atmosphere, and increasingly about what we do to be low or zero impact, right? So I say story. It's also about impact. It's also about metrics and measurement. It's also about expectations from the many sides. Delivering the right kind of information, making the right kind of decision. On the other side of the bench, it's a little bit of a pull and push, my slide here. So on the other side of the bench is the increased pressure from various entities on the scale, scope, and speed of transformation for sustainability. We see more regulation, more compliance, and for some, this is maybe the scary part. So who are those entities and what do they want? What do they require? We all have one particular focus at the end. We want a transformation of sector to ensure greater sustainability, but this requires access to that information, that validated information, the non-financial disclosures, whether it's emissions, whether it's water usage, whether it's waste treated, the impact on biodiversity, the gender equality, the business donation, the child labor in your supply chain, you name it. These are the stakeholders that are interested in that validated information. And I'm just going to pick out on a few of them here because I'm not going to be talking very much longer. But investors want to see that a hotel business, understands how exposed to risk their business or business model is before investing. Are you prepared to go to net zero? If not, what is it that's missing in your puzzle? Are you working on energy efficiency? If not, why not? The corporate buyers require that information because they need to be able to report to their own shareholders on Scope 3 emissions. That's their business travel in any case. The owners may be looking at their property, their hotel property, and saying, what kind of exit value can I have on my asset? How green is that property and how much is that going to give me a premium? And of course, the consumers, we've had surveys. The consumers, the travelers are interesting because there's always a little bit that intention action gap happening. We're increasingly interested in this, but whether we actually do it is a different story. I think the European Commission has got this special barometer on climate change every year. They survey over 25,000 individuals, and it shows that a little bit. A lot of people care and want to do something about climate and about sustainability. And that's everything. I want to recycle more. I want to reduce my waste more. I want to cut down on disposable, da, da, da. It shows that, but again, there is a certain amount of intention action. It's the same as I want to book a hotel that's sustainable. Okay, but then maybe some other components may play a game as well, whether it's the rate, whether it's the location, and so on. And so what do I have in this in between? Then on the other side, of course, the regulators are setting the stage for that validated information. In particularly, I guess we can highlight the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. We have already the draft on the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. We have, and those are agnostic, so they're not for hospitality businesses. They're for businesses in period and for large businesses in any case. So it's not going to be, it applies to whatever, a minimum amount of percentage. Probably 97% of the businesses in the EU don't have to worry directly about the CSRD at this point. But you do have to worry about reporting, because ultimately it is expected that every business, whether you are mandated to report or not, you are expected to invest in your transformation. How do you invest in transformation? Is you're going to have to provide the necessary data to get funding to be able to invest in your transformation. So it's like a chicken and the egg in some ways. So for SMEs, I think it's another game, but reporting currently is not well implemented. But this is going to have to change, and it will change, I think. So, and especially if you look at tourism SMEs in the EU, that's 90% of all businesses in tourism in the EU are SMEs. And they're the two major concerns. Those SMEs or even micro enterprises, so less than 10 employees, have got a significant impact, right, on employment, on society, but also on the environment. And those really are not necessarily depending on their legal status. They just have an impact. And then we know that there's got to be a redirection of investment to support that transition of those small businesses. And so that, those SMEs, to be competitive, to secure funding, those small, medium-sized hotels, for example, they will need to invest in their own transformation. And that, right, finding the money for this needs to be, you need to be able to show that data on sustainability, that right data to that sustainability. There's another one I've highlighted here, which is the EU Green Claim Directive. This is quite interesting in a way that it's putting the onus on any claims that we're making to the business themselves. You want to be a low carbon property and you want to market yourself this way, or you want to market yourself net zero, then you have to provide the substantiation for it, for that claim, and you're going to have to pay for it. And so that's, I think it's a big push towards greenwashing that's been happening. I think this is basically an answer to this. We have other things which, sorry, I went a bit too fast. There's other parts which for small businesses don't apply directly here, but will apply down the supply chain. That could include the CSDDD that you see here, the due diligence directive, as well as the EU Circular Economy Action Plan. Maybe one last slide in terms of, and again, I can make those slides available to whoever wants them. I was thinking about this myself a little bit and saying, well, what is it that who's responsible for what? I mean, it's a little bit of a complicated system, an ecosystem in hospitality, simply because we have so many players, really. So I've just listed the owner operators and brand franchisers of what is it that you're looking at and what are your levers that you can play with, really. And of course, the brands have got, I've got potential with the brand standard in terms of sustainability practices, whereas the owners have got potential with the way that they develop leases, including green lease. The operators are often on impact data. I mean, they're the one that have operational data right there, and then you track your energy, your water, your waste, etc. And in terms of performance, the owners is often looking at the asset itself, the building, whereas the operator will be looking at the daily operations and the accountability towards environmental, social, governance data, whereas the brands is trying to gather this from all their franchisees. The level of compliance will depend on the size of your business. Of course, this is why I've put CSRD. If you're a large owner, for example, for a small operator, you might just be bound to local law framework. Whereas if you operate in multi-destinations, then you have to look at what the regulations are in those areas. But the reporting, this is where we see a lot of changes, actually. in terms of that standardization of and validation of the data. So from the CSRD and from the International Sustainability Standard Board, the ISSB, that has released the first set of standards for climate information, climate-related information. And so a lot of this is changing. It's happening. It's a little bit complicated, but in a way, so I've just drafted this actually for this webinar here. I haven't gotten into details, but just as a snapshot. But you could say it's a similar split for specific phases of hotel development. So you could have a hotel development to say, well, what are the stages and who does what? So if you have retrofitting, what sort of data do we need on FF&E, and who care? Like, what do we need? Circularity, percentage of circularity, the impact on embodied carbon. All of this is coming, I think. Interior design, anything regarding the data that's going to impact my overall carbon footprint, which is beyond just my operation every day. I turn the light on and off, but it is about the material that we put in the hotel. And that material has got plenty of embodied carbon. And I think this is where the data granularity and complexity will come into the game. So it goes a little bit into another area, but I think this is going to be very important moving forward. And I know I'm running out of time, and so therefore that's all I wanted to say, really. These are the three books, some of the three books, but I'm going to start sharing now, and I look forward to the other presentation and the questions, of course.
Thank you. Thank you, really, for setting the scene. And as you mentioned, of course, a lot of these are very complex issues, but I wanted to pick up on two things. One, really quickly, is that part of some of what you mentioned and highlighted as, very relevant to the big picture is what we would like to follow up on, and we'll mention this at the end as well. In the future webinar, really focused on standards and certification and indicators as solutions available to hotels. And two is really relevant to our discussions, which Fabio is going to lead around Green Stay, is what you mentioned about the relevance of what all industry players are facing right now in terms of some of the stick side of things in sustainability reporting requirements. And that is exactly what I think is happening within the ecosystem of HRS Green Stay. So a lot of hotels, large or small, are involved in Green Stay, partly because, or the relevance to that is really the demand from the buyers. And including all of these. So next up is Fabio, and he's going to guide us through all of this related to Green Stay, how it works, why is it important for both of these players to think about reporting and the solutions that Green Stay is providing in terms of supporting hotels as well as the corporate customers. So with that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ayako, and Professor Willie, thank you so much for the great presentation. I think it fits very nicely with what we want to present with the Green Stay Initiative. So let me just share my screen, and I hope you can all see it and hear me well. Yes? Okay, thanks, Professor. I'm just going to make my screen a bit bigger, and then we can start. And I think we would just like to have a quick recap on the Green Stay Initiative. But before we start on this, I think it's important to start the discussion from, let's say, different sides, right? So we identify that a lot of the hotels are now understanding that there is a increasing demand to share data. A lot in response to what Professor Willie just introduced, not only, let's say, on the questions that we're facing because of climate change. So we see more agreements being made and regulation and so on. But also because this is becoming more and more part of the business operation. So you see there's, of course, the side of compliance and regulation. So CSRD is really becoming a reality from 2024. Some of the first companies will have to report already from 2025. And then this is becoming more of a, let's say, there's a risk perspective in terms of the triple bottom line, as Professor Willie said. But there's also a perspective of complying, not only just because of risk, but this is also an opportunity to receive more investments, have a different type of product in the market, a different vision of how we approach sustainability. So we see with that, there are different sides, right, for this discussion. And for today, we would like to just recap quickly on what we developed with the Green Stay Initiative, why we're doing what we're doing, and also how we are supporting both sides to comply with what's coming in terms of sustainability. So the Green Stay Initiative was developed back in 2020. So we were, during the pandemic, already seeing also all of this legal framework that Professor really shared with you, not only the Paris Agreement, but all of the discussions in the European Union with the European Green Deal, for example, then the European Climate Law, and the first drafts of the CSRD coming. So we could see that sustainability, once we got out of that situation, would be the top priority for many customers. So we introduced the Green Stay Initiative back in 2021. And initially, we just focused on the footprint assessment, but then we expanded to have basically 3 levels of sustainability that you can join Green Stay. And this was much in response to the feedback that we received from you, our partners, that maybe because of the impacts of the pandemic and also the essentially the lack of resources, you could have, for example, sustainability initiatives in place, but you were unable to share the data for the footprint assessment. So that's why we decided to start with the basic level and really the entry level for the Green Stay Initiative, align with the Hotel Sustainability Basics, and then essentially guide whoever joins in the basic level to how you can go to the advanced and ultimately to the professional level. So the advanced level, so basic level, it's 11 criteria of sustainability covering different elements. So for example, energy management, but also green housekeeping, your food and beverage and other, for example, if you have a recycling program in place. And then the advanced level expands to 25 criteria. And we have the footprint assessment. And here again, we didn't want to create something out of the, let's say, reinvent the wheel. So we looked at the industry, we align with the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance's methodologies. So we follow the HCMI, for example, Hotel Carbon Measurement Initiative, Hotel Water Measurement Initiative, and the Hotel Waste methodology to calculate waste. So these are the 3 metrics that we require for the footprint assessment. Carbon is mandatory. Water and waste, we highly recommend that you report when we know these are elements that sometimes are harder to manage. And then we have the professional level that will become even more, let's say, required and important, because here's where we cover more elements of sustainability with 80 criteria, the footprint assessment, and then we have also, as part of the requirement, an external verification, meaning that if you have achieved a third-party verification or a third-party certification, for example, with the likes of Green Globe, Green Key, Green Sign, just to mention a few, you could go in our system and upload this, and basically you are covering the requirements for the professional level. So as part of this recap, I just wanted to share how things look like in our platform quickly. So essentially, as I said, we align with, for example, for the criteria with the GSTC criteria and the main criteria used by certifications. We, of course, focus on what is more relevant to corporate customers. And with the footprint assessment, we have the HCMI methodology. And basically what we did was digitize the entire process. So I hope you can see the platform. Can you just confirm, Ayako, if you can see it? Yeah, thank you. So this is the Green Stay platform. I'll just go quickly just to show you.
Fabio, sorry, but right now, I think you're still on the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay, sorry. Let me share my screen again. You should be able to see the platform. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to show really quickly that every Green Stay hotel, or every hotel that is in our database, has a link to this Green Stay platform. So in case you have not accessed the platform yet, you can request the link either to our contact, or we have also a platform where you can request a link with your HKey and email, or just reach out to greenstay@hrs.com and we'll provide the link. So here you can choose the different levels. So for example, basic level has the basic criteria here. You can always upload the certification if you have one, and a sustainability program, and we'll make this visible to our customers. We have the advanced level and professional level as well. So here you have the list of 25 questions, here you have the list of 80 questions, and then we have the footprint assessment. So for the footprint assessment, you can either claim a footprint. So let's say if you already have a third-party verified claim footprint, carbon footprint, you can claim a footprint with your certification, or you can add a report, and here you just will follow the elements requested by the Photo Carbon Measurement Initiative. So it's very straightforward to share your data through this platform, and once you go through the assessment, you will see your results here, and essentially your carbon footprint, your carbon class, water class, and overall a green class. And we'll touch upon this later, but also to support you in this process, because I know sometimes it can be tricky to have the data to know where to start. We also developed a knowledge hub, which we'll show in more detail later on in the presentation. And you always have access here through the other platform. So I just wanted to recap on Green Stay, and if you have any questions about this or how you can join, if you have questions specifically to each level, please feel free to send them in the Q&A, and we'll cover them.
Fabio, so I think that in addition to sort of the why this has been created and how it works, I guess, in terms of getting started for hotels and so on, I think that it would be really great. And I know that you brought a lot of information on this as well. So yeah, what tell us a little bit more on how Green Stay actually supports in terms of report, reduce, and remove.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the why it's basically covered. I think Professor really shared a great insight on why this is necessary. Of course, top of mind for us when we started this journey was, well, how we can leverage certifications, but we all know in this group that certifications can be tricky because we have more than 200 labels out there. So making, the differentiation between one and the other and comparing them can be hard. So the idea for Green Stage is really provide this framework where both hotels can report on their emissions with us through this platform, have the transparency on where they are, so they can potentially start implementing solutions to reduce their emissions and ultimately remove their emissions. And this is the same for our customers. So our customers need this data in order to report, right? So we talked about CSRD, but it's also about reporting internally on your results, where you are, and how you can potentially reduce your footprint. Then have this focus on reducing as much as you can. So from procurement, from booking, and so on. And we'll talk more about this later. And whatever you cannot reduce at this point, then take let's say, the responsibility to start engaging on how you can, in the right way, of course, compensate for what is the share of unavoidable emissions, and not in a way that is just the choice of the traveler, let's say like this, and in the point of sale. That's not the idea, but rather how you can do this in a systemic way. So always focus on reduce, but if you cannot reduce now, what can you do to start engaging on this? So on the reduce topic, we have a big focus on the procurement exercise. So really making sustainability as part of Green Stay something actionable within other dimensions, of course, that are relevant for travel managers and procurement managers. So this is just a view of our procurement platform, where you can see there are the dimensions here of savings that are, of course, really important: satisfaction, safety, and security. But sustainability is growing as one of the topics that a lot of customers are focusing on. So when our hotel partners share the data with us, this is basically what our customers are seeing. So you see a very detailed pop-up on what level of Green Stay the hotel is currently in, the footprint assessment with those with the CO2 footprint per room night, the water footprint per room night, and so on. If they are engaging already in the emissions compensation program, which we'll talk about later, and those qualitative criteria and the level of compliance to those. And any sustainability programs and certifications are also made visible here whenever available. And of course, we don't want the travel managers or procurement managers to open one hotel one by one. So this is all feeding a recommendation engine already in the procurement exercise, that when you put, for example, sustainability as one of the first attributes, all of our recommendations will be focused on providing the best hotel program, balancing out sustainability with saving, satisfaction, and so on. And then, of course, the other element is labeling the hotels. It's important to say that not every hotel part of Green Stay ends up with a label in the booking channels, because you need to reach a certain level of sustainability. And this can also be configured by our customers to say, I have this sustainability target, for example, by 2030, and we'll talk to this as an example of telecom. So in order to achieve this, I need to make a few changes to this configuration, and maybe only the hotels that reach a certain level will be labeled in the booking channels. And basically what we're building is this, let's say, self-optimizing engine, where we, as I said, we have this demand from our corporate customers with travelers. Professor Willie talked about this bottom-up approach. So you have the travelers, but also you have from the top, let's say, the travel managers, the procurement managers, and even the head of procurement and the likes of CFO now demanding that this is a part of the transparency they need for Scope 3 emissions. And this demand then fits how we design and program the hotel program for the customers within those 5S dimensions. But sustainability, as I said, is becoming a higher focus now because of this new regulation, which then fits how we are communicating with suppliers, right? So hotel chains, TMCs, OBGs, and so on. So all of this performance that we're talking about in sustainability then is assessed. So this is the data that we're collecting in different levels. And this is all pushed then to the travelers with what we call the steering. So here we have rate caps, we have the hotel labeling with Green Stay, we have recommendation engines that can be configured to, for example, show in the hotel list the hotels that are part of Green Stay and are engaging with and becoming more efficient. So this is over time, as we have more hotels as part of Green Stay, and we develop more capabilities to have this end-to-end sustainability management. That means that we can have more capacity to show different scenarios where you can reduce your emissions from procurement, and then implement this in the booking channel. So the travelers have the information at the point of sale when they're booking about what is the ultimate, let's say, the ideal hotel, considering also other dimensions, of course, that are very important. And then on report, which is a very important piece, is we have developed the sustainability insights, which essentially enables our customers to have all of the data they need for checking progress where they are right now. So, for example, they can check the CO2 per room night of their hotel program in a specific period. So you can check, for example, your past fiscal year, and whenever you have a selected period, we compare with the previous period to see if the emissions are going up or down. You see your total emissions, the total of water usage, and so on, and also some of the insights on what destinations are driving your emissions or reducing your emissions. And ultimately, we also provide some recommendations on how you can potentially improve your footprint. And for hotels that are not part of Green Stay yet, we also provide a scientific backfilling to basically cover with a calculation or an estimation. And we are building tools for our customers to be able to share, to generate reports aligned with CSRD, for example. And this is on the corporate side, and then you can see why this is why it's relevant to share the data, because this is part of the exercise to develop your strategy. But also we're developing something similar for our hotel partners to have access to a similar report where they can see their current state, where they can improve over time, how many room nights they're receiving, and so on. And then we go to the last piece, but Ayako, I think you like
so
to.
yeah, before you move on, because I think the last bit that you mentioned, maybe this is the answer to one of the questions, and we have questions in Q&A, which is
that's great.
Thank you. So one of the questions was, is it possible to see how our own hotel is showing up? Is that, I think, maybe what you're saying, that you are developing, that the hotels will be able to see sort of how they show up as well?
Yes, so similar sustainability insights. I still like, I don't want to promise or anything in terms of timeline. But yes, we want to be able to share more information with our hotel partners in a similar way, but also in terms of vision, I guess I'm not sure if also the question was related to this, right? So how we are displaying the data on the procurement platform, for example. So this is one example, but also we have a scenario builder, another view where you can select certain scenarios. So if I want to reduce 10% of my emissions, then I can see what does that mean in terms of my ADR as well, how many hotels I would have to accept into the RFP and things like that. So this is just one example of a customer view.
Perfect.
And also when the hotels are responding to the RFPs, they can see how they benchmark with other hotels in the same destination in terms of green stay, of course, but also in other dimensions.
Thank you. And since we have you, just a couple of things. Just keeping in mind that we have 10 minutes left, and we really want to make sure
Exactly.
want to cover the case study. But also, and I think we do have the answer to this as well. One question was the audit platform access, the code everyone has, but if not, contact you or contact the Green Stay team, I think is the answer.
Yes, yeah. So we can drop the Green Stay email in the chat, and also the link to the Start Here page where you can request your link, or also you can just send an email to your contact at HRS, and it will.
Exactly. The last question really quickly before we move forward is the related to the professional level, as you mentioned, the Umweltcheck certification. Is that officially accepted is a question as part of, and I think you also mentioned that the list of that what the programs that are accepted is available on the audit platform.
Yes, it's available there. Umweltcheck, I need to double check because I don't remember from the top of my head. I don't think it's there.
Okay.
But we are constantly updating the list. So if you're missing something in the audit platform, you can always let us know and we'll review it and see if it's fitting with the requirement, for example, for the professional level, and we'll make it available.
Perfect. So let's make sure we mention that in follow-up as well. Thanks for these questions. And yeah, let's go to our remove part.
Yes. So the remove part, I think we're running a bit out of time, so I'll just be brief and because you have more information, you probably received more information about this already. We launched this program end of last year, and basically the idea here is to have two streams. One is hotels that are part of Green Stay, and we can see they're in a journey to reduce their emissions already, meaning that we can see from your efficiency class that you are within the top 50% hotels in your destination. You will see in the audit platform that you have an invitation to join this emissions compensation program, which is essentially a program that you can enroll. And we already have a partner that we procured high quality compensation projects. So here we're talking specifically about the voluntary carbon market, where once the bookings are happening, you will receive a compensation fee, which is based on an average of 15 euros per ton. And essentially you will have I think I remember from the procurement platform, there's a CO2 compensated label that you can receive, and we provide all of the description about what that entails, the type of projects that we're working with, and so on. And also on the booking channels, you would have also a label. So you can get more information on this on the Knowledge Hub. So we will have a dedicated page for that, and on the audit platform as well, if you are fitting the requirements for the emissions compensation program. We also have a video, which I'm not going to show now because we would like to share the case study with you, but you can also check this video with more details on how to become part of the emissions compensation program, what it entails, the cost, but also the benefits of starting engaging with, let's say, responsible compensation in the right way. So, of course, we talked about a lot of things. Let's say, Professor really made a great job in providing, let's say, the full picture of what is the problem, right? Then we have all the regulations that are now trickling down to this discussion. And then I think it's a great example that we have is basically coming from Deutsche Telekom, which is why Danny is here with us today. So feel free to reach out to Danny if you have any questions. But Deutsche Telekom, as many of you might know, is a very big company They have more or around 200,000 employees, if I'm not wrong, Jenny. And they are present in basically 50 countries, which means they are within the scope of all of the regulations we were talking about. Which means, of course, Telecom already has developed their own science-based targets. They have clear targets to achieve by 2030, for example, reducing 55% of their overall emissions along scope 1, 2, and 3 until 2030. So that's 55% compared to 2020, which is a very, let's say, challenging baseline, to say the least, because that was a year that we had drastic reduction in travel, as we all know. And they aim to achieve climate neutrality or net zero by 2040. So of course, there are many challenges in putting this into practice. And we've been collaborating since, let's say, beginning of last year on really deep diving on these targets and understanding how we can make them a reality for their hotel program. So starting, for example, on what we did today on discussing what is Green Stay, what methodology we're following, how we can collect this data, how we can verify this data, and make this available, as I said, from a report, reduce, and remove perspective. And then taking these targets that I just mentioned, 55% reduction until 2030, 2040 net zero, and putting this into a perspective of, okay, how does this distribute then for the next year, for example, for when we start procuring hotels. So just so you know, Telecom procures hotels biannually. So this year they will start procuring hotels. That's why we started this discussion way earlier, so we could have all of the sustainability strategy ready for this year. And then once the baseline has been defined and the reduction targets also agreed upon, what could we potentially start engaging with a special model to compensate emissions? As I said, there is this opportunity for hotels to join the Green Stay Initiative and the emissions compensation program if you reach the requirements. But also there's a share of unavoidable emissions that Telecom will basically have to start thinking about how to deal with. So at the end, we reach this point where we have this end-to-end approach of reporting, reducing, and removing emissions. And of course, this is a first approach, right? So we're starting this. So when we look a bit deeper on the hotel program, we would see that as of now, what we have is a share of, for example, 45% of hotels are in the basic level, 47.5% are advanced, and 0.5 are professional. So you can see there's a big space here for the professional level to increase, and that's a big opportunity for those of you who already have the certification and a third-party verification. And then we still have a share of hotels that have not yet joined Green Stay. So what we are discussing is ahead of the procurement season, which will start in the next 2 or 3 months, how we can reach out to the hotels that are not part of Green Stay and for them to join. And specifically for this share of hotels that are in the basic level, we need to start a conversation to move to advanced. Because this is very important, as we saw, due to the regulations. Essentially basic, it's a nice to have, of course. We want to know that what you were doing, but we need basically the advanced level, right? The footprint assessment, more indications on the other initiatives that you are driving. So at the end, Telecom can not only from a report point of view have the data, which is very important, but of course for the procurement season to really implement the sustainability strategy, and ultimately on the booking channel apply also their sustainability scorecard. So here, essentially, also as part of this conversation, and we saw how challenging it is, the target that Telecom has, so 55% reduction until 2030, how can we drive tangible reductions in terms of carbon emissions? While, of course, and we heard from Professor Willie, we don't want to have this tunnel vision only on carbon, but we need to take into consideration the 55% reduction, right? So, of course, all of the other elements are very important for procurement, but for labeling purposes, Telecom is focusing on the hotels that are carbon class A, meaning that you are part of the Green Stay Initiative, you are either in the advanced or professional level, and you are within the 25% most efficient hotels in the destination. And then some of you might ask, well, then what happens, right? If I'm part of Green Stay and then I'm not quite there yet, right? So maybe carbon class C or B. That doesn't mean that this is something to demotivate the hotels that aren't quite there yet. It's more an initiative so you can see where you can basically get. So maybe there's still a way to go. And for this, we are developing the Knowledge Hub to support you in understanding. And Professor Willy has a very nice lecture there already recorded on how to handle energy, for example, to reduce your emissions. And this is just a specific case of telecom. That doesn't mean other customers are doing the same. So there are different approaches, and it would be either way shown in the procurement platform, regardless of your assessment level and also your carbon efficiency. But this is just to bring one tangible example of how a corporate customer like telecom is treating this and taking a different approach. Let's say in an end-to-end perspective. Yeah, so we discussed procurement, booking, reporting. So in 2023, essentially what we achieved was this implementation, right, of the customized Deutsche Telekom sustainability scoring methodology, let's call it like this, and also this integration on their booking tool. So in this case, they use Honesto. And then what we are discussing now, or the focus going forward, is on this communication initiative to elevate the hotels from basic to advanced. And for this, we have all of the support in terms of the step-by-step, what do you need to prepare and so on in the Knowledge Hub. And also having all of these tools in place to constantly revisit and monitor the results and implement basically this also everything that we discuss on the procurement strategy, right? So procuring the hotels based on participation in Green Stay, if you can, for example, be part of the emissions compensation program. And also, maybe Danny, I don't know if you would like to maybe share a little bit on the traveler engagement side. I know you have other initiatives there, but we have the labeling with Green Stay, we have filters, and of course, we're discussing how to configure a recommendation engine based on Green Stay. But if there's anything you'd like to share, I think we...
It's a bunch of measures at the end. So but we're not only talking about labeling, and we're talking also about communication awareness internally, and also about, as you said, strategy and procurement. We're talking about different measures regarding the online booking tool. So there, I think we have many approaches here, but it's a very, very big part, as you said, that we are able, that we have the transparency, that we're able to measure really also success of our measures at the end. So because we are not, as you said at the beginning, we are. It's required that Telecom is reporting the emissions and the footprint in scope 1 till 3. So also in the travel environment, and so there we are forced to report everything, and our approach would be to have the most accurate data on this, and able to measure everything that we do in this topic. Yeah, so that's the important thing, and I think the Green Stay Initiative is for us is really the baseline to going further on it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Lenny. Yeah, and I think this fits very nicely on essentially circling back on what Professor Willy was mentioning on the challenges, right, for hotels on this journey to net zero. I think and as you said, Professor, we're not, this is not just work of one individual, right? We need to do this in a systemic way. So that's why with Green Stay, we just want to be kind of in the, let's say the middle ground, and enabling this supplier engagement, right? So Telecom can put the requirements, and we can communicate this to our hotel partners, but also not just put this pressure, but also have the solution, right? So we have the platform, is free of charge. We have a knowledge hub. So essentially for the hospitality industry, we know the challenges, right? We're talking about, if we want to achieve net zero, an investment of 800 billion until 2050. So it's not something small, right? So we need knowledge, we need expertise, and we need resources. And that's why essentially we also developed, as I mentioned a few times, the Green Stay Knowledge Hub. This is available 24/7 in the Audit platform. So if you access the Audit platform, you see the access to the Knowledge Hub. And in the Knowledge Hub, we have materials, basically step-by-step approach to join Green Stay in the advanced level, how you can start collecting data. We have a Green Stay course where you can go through some modules, and then there is a lecture, for example, from Professor Willie explaining how you can potentially reduce your energy consumption and become more efficient operationally, but many other lectures that probably are very interesting in this journey. I will skip the video real quickly. And I think, again, we talked about a lot of pressures, a lot of risks, a lot of difficult things, but I think also we can flip this to the other side and say there's a lot of potential and a lot of opportunities as well when you start engaging with sustainability. So we see this in our data. I think this is another great opportunity of engaging with Green Stay, is that you see you can start changing things, because if you don't, you cannot change what you don't measure, right? And start receiving these insights where we can see from our data that Green Stay hotels, they are on average 31% more adopted into hotel programs than hotels that are not part of Green Stay. And also there is an increase in bookings that we see on average, right, for hotels part of Green Stay. So also improving your performance over time means that you get more visibility, especially for customers that are really focusing, such as telecom, in performance. So it's a way to also future-proof your business. And you don't have to start crazy or big. So maybe just the first steps, access the Knowledge Hub, see what you can report. We have a team as well. If you have any difficulties in filling the assessment, we're ready to help. And we can see that being part of Green Stay actually yields a lot of benefits. So we understand sometimes it can be a bit of a pressure and time consuming, but once you're part of it, I think you get the idea and how Green Stay can support going forward. And with that, I will just stop because I know we're a little bit over time, and I'm sorry about this. And Jakob, to you.
Yes. I just have one last slide and wrap up, but before doing so, I just want to say thank you to everyone on board. Really, thank you so much for your brilliant lecture. Thank you, Fabio, as always, for you passionately representing this really important too. And Danny and Telecom for, I hope you realize how valuable it is for you to be sharing your side of the story for the hospitality community. Thank you so much for just sharing and being open to sharing. And I think that I hope you take away from this in Green Stay, you can start small. The more you do, the more benefits you will have access to. And it is a journey. So I hope you will continue making progress on your journey step by step. And hopefully part of that will be the Knowledge Hub. We will continue updating content, new webinars in the future and so on that you can see on the Knowledge Hub if you're interested. And the emissions compensation program, which was mentioned today as well, you will receive this slide afterwards and have the link. All of the links mentioned today will be available to you. And any question that we didn't cover, we'll make sure to follow up. And with that, thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this webinar. This has been really great. We are really ambitious in what we wanted to share, but thank you for staying and thank you for being part of the session.
Exactly. Thank you so much. I also shared the Green Stay email and the link to request your link. So with HKey and your email, you should be able to request a link and you will receive it by email. But if you struggle with anything, just send us an email and of course we'll help you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Willie, and thank you, Danny.
Thank you, Ayako. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, Danny.
Bye-bye.